to see what happens with this plan, because that could certainly be exciting for a lot of people who've been waiting on the sidelines for something better to happen in the housing market. We are supposed to get a live report from Fox Business Network's Peter Barnes. Peter, I believe, was the one who broke this story here on Fox about this. Oh, there we go. That was a nice segue. I didn't even know you were up. Peter Barnes from the Fox Business Network. Peter, we have been talking a little bit about this plan to try to lower mortgage rates. And I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit more about what this sort of plan in the works would include and how it could help people who've been sitting on the sidelines.
Well, part of the idea here is obviously to force mortgage rates down to this 4.5% level, as low as 4.5%. The current market rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is about 5.5%. So this would involve, a 1 percentage point haircut on new loans backed by the Treasury. The plan, as we understand it, would be done through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which already, by the way, either own or guarantee about half of all the mortgages out there in the $12 trillion mortgage market. So we think that this program could provide new mortgages on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of mortgages, perhaps even $1 trillion worth of mortgages, depending on how many homes could be bought through this plan. And right now, even with this down market, down housing market, we're still selling 4.5 million homes per year. We still have foreclosures, running at projected to run about 2 million a year. So you're, looking at inventory of perhaps 6 million homes or so. If you had an average mortgage of $200,000, which is the average mortgage in the United States, that would be $1.2 trillion in purchases financed and backed by the Treasury. We do not have any guidelines on how this would work, but we can have reported that previous plans to provide incentives to homeowners have been targeted, have been limited, such as tax credits. If you earn over a certain amount, you can't qualify. Fannie and Freddie Mae have their own restrictions on what they can and cannot insure. The conforming loan limits and things like that. Currently, $729,000 is the max. That's supposed to go down to $650,000 next year. But still, an enormous number of people, principally first-time buyers who are on the sidelines, would be the ones who would come in and take advantage of this. And the idea is to clear up all this backlog of inventory out there of all these unsold homes and try and provide some stability to the housing market, which in turn could provide some stability to the economy, which in turn could help provide some stability to the stock market.
Got it. Hey, Peter, where would the money come from to pay for this?
Put it on the tab.
Oh, okay.
This would be
the TARP program, that extra $350 billion that's been put off until next year.
Well, I talked to a source this morning who says that it doesn't necessarily have to come out of the TARP, and I just want to clarify here that just because the Treasury would back, hundreds of billions of dollars in new loans, or perhaps even $1 trillion, those loans would be offset by assets on the Treasury balance sheet, which would be the homes themselves. And so whenever you do any kind of these plans, and the FDIC has talked about doing, some kind of foreclosure prevention plan with loan guarantees or whatever, you have to set aside a certain amount of money for inevitable foreclosures and defaults. Even in a good market, even in a healthy housing market, we have 1 million foreclosures a year. So the idea, if they took money out of the TARP, there would be some percentage of that, some amount, maybe 20 billion or 30 billion, that would be set aside to cover any losses under this program. The theory is that if you do it at 4.5%, you're actually going to have you're going to decrease the number of foreclosures and defaults significantly, because you'd make the mortgages so much more affordable for people. But the Treasury would not have to do this out of TARP, I'm told, because, frankly, Treasury can just go out and issue new Treasury securities, raise hundreds of billions of dollars by selling new Treasuries, and just adding it to the national debt, and then taking that money to backstop the program at Fannie and Freddie.
All right. Peter Barnes, thanks a lot. And good work on getting this story out on Fox before other people did. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Anyone have anything they want to comment on about after hearing Peter's report?
Well, I think it comes down to a question of whether we're making smart loans, right? I mean, the reason why we got into trouble is not so much because we were lending so much, but because we were lending in stupid ways, right? We were lending with people who didn't have income to cover their loans.
They were called ninja loans.
Right.
No income, no assets or jobs,
Right.
and then you qualified for a loan.
Right. I mean, it was unbelievable.
She loves that acronym.
And so,
Yeah, love ninja.
and so if we're making smart loans and the government can borrow for less than it's lending, and we're getting people back into the housing market, then it's a good idea, I would think. It's just a question of whether we're making, maybe we shouldn't be lending 95% of the home value. Maybe we should be lending 70% of the home value.
All right. Well, to be continued. We will keep an eye on this program and let you guys know what develops on that. Important story overseas today and for the past week, of course, is Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice met, of course, first in India with leaders there, and then she went to Pakistan. Mike Mueller was over there as well and meeting with Pakistani officials. Important story. You were ambassador to India. One of the things that India is asking for is India wants Pakistan to hand over these 20 militants, these terrorists. Pakistan has said, well, we're not entirely certain that we are in fact responsible for these attacks. Is Pakistan going to do anything to grab these guys and hand them over to India?
I wouldn't want to bet on it. I think the Indians have asked in the past for those they believe might have some connection to previous terror incidents, and the Pakistanis have not responded. Pakistanis have responded with a counteroffer, and that is that they will contribute, participate in the investigations, and then take action against those they can build a case against. I think probably in the end that's going to be the more promising way to go. In other words, to try and American help can be part of the solution here.
Do you
try
believe,
to forge a partnership.
When Pakistan says we will help, do you believe them?
It won't happen immediately. There will be a lot of resistance. But it's the first step in the right way to go. And that is to form a common consensus that terror is bad for both houses, that neither side has an interest in seeing it, and both have a reason to try to put an end to it, and try to create a framework of cooperation that would begin to address the acts of terror, but also the spirit that underlies it.
Can Zardari, the president of Pakistan, can he afford to crack down on these groups, to cooperate with India, or does he run the risk of being overthrown, having more terror attacks in his own country, because there is a big group of people there that wouldn't want to cooperate with India and are, whether we like it or not, Islamic fundamentalists?
Well, I think you put your finger right on the key question. No government in Pakistan can deliver on broad promises of any sort, whether it's turning over a group of militants or engaging in cooperation. And Zardari is a recently elected president. He doesn't control all the instruments in the state, but he can start moving things in the right direction. This will not be settled. These incidents of terror and PAC participation in them will not be settled by one or two gestures, but a long-term addressing of the issues at hand. And there Zardari can play a role, but he can't do it alone. He's got to bring along his army, his intelligence service. He's got to bring along Pakistani public opinion.
But it's often said that his intelligence service, that the ISI, for example, is infiltrated with these Islamic fundamentalists. So how do you get these people? How do you turn these people around? Can he turn people around?
Not easily. You're absolutely right. I think you just have said it. The back and forth of the interplay between the Pakistani state and its intelligence services and groups engaged in militant activities, first in Afghanistan, later in India, and in Kashmir, has gone on for a long time. It's now deeply rooted. And it will not be wiped out quickly. There
are some reports coming out in American newspapers today, and it's sourcing U.S. officials that former members of the ISI, this is the Pakistani intelligence agency, according to these U.S. officials, were involved in training members of this group that's believed to be responsible for the attacks in India. So if former members of the ISI were training these guys,